Hello, everyone. I am Latanya Rease Miles, and I am founder of the Empowering First Generation College Group, new director of university partnerships at ReUp Education, founder of First Gen Juice, et cetera, et cetera. However, I'm here today, joined by a very special guest. She's a little nervous, but that's okay. Everybody, please welcome my mother, Gloria Rease. Say hello to the people, Mom.
Hello, people. How are you? Yes, I am her nervous mom.
Mom, as you know, I'm very excited to have this conversation. The plan is for it to be a couple of conversations. I promise it won't be more than three or four. I promise.
Okay.
Um, but I've been um, doing some good thinking about this idea of legacy. I know you and I have been talking, offhand about it, but it keeps coming up about first generation college students and this really broad concept of legacy. So this is actually going to be the kickoff conversation. There'll be others to come, but I thought it would be very appropriate to start with you and I because not only am I the first in our immediate family to go and graduate from college, you hold the distinction of being the second one. Whoop whoop. So proud of you,
Yes,
Mom.
thank you.
um, and so I just wanted the idea of this particular conversation is more like high level, big picture type of thing. And then next time we'll get into your specific journey. But let me pause there and have you just introduce yourself, whatever you want to say about yourself.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I am Latanya's mother, and let's see, I'm a retired entrepreneur. I started part time as an entrepreneur in 1982 and full time in 1988. Um, But now I am retired from that and am full-time caregiver for my 95-year-old mother. Let's see, former Army veteran. Let's see. I got my undergraduate degree after, oh my goodness, probably 20 years of schooling or more. I can't
Hmm.
remember how long it took me to get it. So I got my undergraduate degree at Trinity College in Washington, D.C. And then I got my master's degree at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. Um, God, how old was I? Like 48 or something when I got my graduate. What
That
was
was
that?
a quick
2000,
turnaround. I mean, because you were in your 40s when you got your undergrad, and then you
right? It was like
quickly.
4 years later. So I think I was like maybe 44 ish when I got my undergraduate degree.
Hmm.
And then, 3 years later, 4 years later, I got my master's degree. But I decided with the master's degree, because it had taken so long to get the undergraduate degree, and I was taking courses here, there, I'd been taking courses for over a couple decades, that what I wanted was a full time college experience.
Mm, okay.
And so that's why I stopped everything and decided to focus strictly on school, because I didn't have that experience before.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Well, I want to actually spend some time talking about you going to graduate school.
Mhm.
I guess that'll be a couple episodes from now. Um, but thanks for sharing that because I didn't realize that that was part of your motivation for,
Mhm.
sort of doing it so quickly. I
Mhm.
do want to say for folks, you are sitting in my former bedroom.
That's
a,
true.
a little closet of a room
Yeah, absolutely,
in
absolutely.
in
It's
Alexandria.
amazing though. And this room, this is where you slept and read and played and do so many things. And right now, it's just really too small to be an office, to be perfectly honest.
And I did all that stuff.
In this little bitty room, where were your dress? Where was your dresser? Did you have one
It was on that wall that's yeah, where you just
where
looked,
Obama's hanging?
where
Yeah.
Obama's hanging, that's where my dresser was. And sometimes I had a little TV in there and that's where I watched the Georgetown games.
must have been at the foot of your bed or something on the
I,
bed.
I
It's
don't
like,
even know how did I get dressed in there.
yeah, right. Standing on the bed. That's funny.
Well, nice full circle moment. I think this is really great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so two things. One, I want to start with, as you know, I'm starting to write my memoir finally. After
Mm-hmm.
putting it off, um, my daughter, your granddaughter Zoe, always poking me. You need to write a story. You need to write your story. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing that. And when you do that, you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found, and I'm still pretty early on, is how much. Well, number one, even though I was first, I definitely wasn't the first to consider going to college, and the first. And we could talk more about that. I definitely wasn't the first that could have gone to college either. And one of the things that I'm focusing on are a lot of the women in our family. I'm thinking like Aunt Maceo, and even when I messaged you about, Aunt Robbie, having some intellectual gifts and whatnot, and then
Mm-hmm.
obviously you. So I really want to tell a story about some of the women in our family too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna start with you right now in this conversation. Okay, so as you know, I'm now a leader, an expert in this thing called first generation college students. And
Mm-hmm.
so my first question for you is, what do you even think about that term? Does it even resonate with you personally, or just your overall thoughts about this idea of first generation to college?
Well, it was really very late. I think you introduced the term to me. Um, and even when I was pursuing college and taking courses and things like that, I didn't think about me being a first in my family to go on to college. I was just taking classes. That's what it felt like. And so it wasn't really until you introduced the term to me, first generation college student, that I even thought about it. And even so, I thought of it in reference to you, but
Hmm.
not myself. So I didn't consider myself a first generation student, college student. And I think that was because um, I was doing all of this part time. I was just taking courses. I was taking, different schools. I mean, I started out at UTEP on camp on base in Fort
Mm.
Bliss. I took a couple classes there, and then I took classes at Midlands Technical College, and then I took classes. I already taken classes at Trinity before I decided I was just going to. And then there was a lot of time in between when
Mm.
I took the classes at Midlands Tech and when I started at Trinity until I really began to focus on actually, let's get a degree,
Mhm.
you know. So I suppose it really wasn't until you were probably in graduate school. I still didn't even think of it while you were in undergraduate. I certainly knew that you were the first to go to a 4 year school when you were at UNC, and I was really very proud of that. When you were at UNC, and then when you went to Howard, and then to Maryland, I certainly knew that. But actually, as it related to myself, I didn't see myself as a first generation college student.
Okay,
Is,
we got a lot to unpack. Go ahead, keep going.
is there any way we can pause this because I hear movement downstairs
Mhm.
just for a second?
Lots to unpack there.
Mm-hmm.
One, I just wanted to say to you, because I'm not sure if I expressed this to you, so I didn't even have an awareness of being first gen until I was in graduate school. So I
Mm-hmm.
went all that way through those, all those different institutions. I mean, obviously, I know I'm the first in our family to go. That was a pretty big deal, but I didn't really connect with that term until
Mm-hmm.
till Tracy Buena Vista, who was working for me at UCLA, like, LT, you're first gen, right? I'm like, what? So that was a kickoff for me. But what you said about your own disconnect from it while you're part-time, I think is really interesting. I think is more institutions or organizations need to think about, let's say, whether it's so-called adult learners or part-timers, how they may or may not be connecting with that identity. I don't think people, honestly, until you said it right now, I think when people are describing first generation students, I think they're still thinking about traditional age students who are
Mm-hmm.
residential
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for the most part.
Sure.
Um, and it's funny, maybe you could answer it now, but one of the things I wanted to ask you is, what do you think is missing? What kind of support do you think is, what kind of support could you have benefited from maybe as a part-time adult student veteran? Like you had a lot of identity, a lot of things that people weren't saying back then.
Mm-hmm.
Back
Yeah.
then, back in the dinosaur age.
Right, right. When the dinosaurs was roaming the earth.
That's right, walking around campus.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I would have benefited from just having a conversation about college. I don't remember anyone talking to me about going to college, how to go to college, how to get funding or money for college. I don't remember ever having that conversation. And I think basically for me, going to college was, it may have even just been an escape,
Hmm.
to get away. But, and because I don't recall any teachers talking to me
Hmm.
about pursuing college. I don't ever remember any of that. Um, I knew that when I applied myself, I was a pretty smart girl, right? And I heard the white girls talking about going to college, and I just kind of thought that that was where smart people went, to
Hmm.
college, you know.
Hmm.
And so that's what I wanted to pursue. Um, and I guess like a because my ultimate goal for college was architectural engineering, and I took a shop class, and I may have been the first girl to take a shop class at GW. I don't know.
Hmm.
But it was a whole bunch of boys in there, and all of the girls were looking at me like I was strange because I was taking a shop class. But we were doing drafting, and I really gravitated towards that because I like math, and I like the rulers and all of that stuff. And the shop teacher saying, "Well, you should be an architect or a draftsman. Well, how do you do that?"
Hmm.
So that's kind of what geared me towards wanting to go to college because I wanted to be an architecture engineer, right? But I think that, well, of course, the support that I felt like I did not have is simply because I didn't have any information, I didn't have any knowledge, and I didn't know the questions to ask, and I didn't know
Hmm.
the people to go to ask those questions. Um, so, what would assist someone else? I don't know, more conversations about the
Hmm.
college experience and how to get into college, what you're looking for in college, how to get the funding. I think those things would have been helpful for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm wondering, so in that Northern Virginia, Alexandria area, what were can you remember some of the schools people these white girls they wanted to go to? Like did they want to go to community college first or go right to a 4 year?
Mm, no, most of it, of course, we didn't have a whole lot of dialogue. It's not
Oh,
like a lot of them were friends,
hanging out.
right? We didn't hang out. So you just overhear conversations that they are
I
having with
gotcha.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
Um, but what I remember is most of them were in state, like Virginia, maybe, UVA or someplace like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Um, and just eavesdropping on conversations that was I'm going to apply at the University of Virginia, you know,
Hmm.
or what was the other school? Most of them were in state. They were all kind of in Virginia. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Mhm.
so funny, how some things just don't change, right? Because
Mhm.
I, I remember being, I was in those honors classes with a whole bunch of white people, and it was the same
Mhm.
kind of thing. And
Mhm.
um, you may remember the only reason I applied to Oberlin College was because Anne, you remember
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
exactly Anne, who was she our valedictorian? Yeah, she ended up being our valedictorian
She was.
because she was our class valedictorian.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
and had gone or was applying or something like that. And I had never heard of this school whatsoever,
Hmm.
Only reason,
Yeah,
same
I
thing.
never heard of it either.
Yeah.
We flew to Ohio though.
We did fine. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
It helped me see that I did not want to go to Oberlin College. um, okay, so speaking of the white girls, right? One of the things I'm also focusing on lately is the significance of being black and first gen. So not just not coming from a college going culture or background, but how race or racism or just or not even racism, just like how culture plays into it. And I just want to get it's not really a specific question, but I just want to get your thoughts and reactions when you reflect on your life, how race may have played a part into your college going or not college going.
Yeah. I was in segregated schools until I went to GW, right? And that was high school. And it
Hold
was
on
a
one
big
second. I need people to know that when you say that it was just one generation, like you know what I mean. This wasn't like my friend said the other day. This wasn't cart and buggy times. That in your lifetime you went to a segregated
Mhm.
school. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was at Laos Crouch, and Laos Crouch was black teachers, black students, and very affirming. Yeah. And then, one year at Parker Gray, black teachers, black students, very affirming. And then just dropped basically in a segregated school. And it was a big shift because the teachers weren't black. Um, I'm mixed with white students who really first time seeing us for the most part, and really, my first time really being around whites for because my community was black, where I lived was black, all my friends were black, and it was difficult getting teased for things that you had been affirmed for before,
Mm,
so
mm,
your
mm,
hair, at Loud's Crouch and Park and Ray, my hair was cute. And I did one year at Minnie Howard and at GW, my hair was nappy or unusual or other, so
mm-hmm,
it took a lot of adjustment. Um, just trying to find out where you fit in, right? And how to continue to have good self esteem about yourself in a new environment where self esteem just was not promoted. No, I had nobody affirming me.
mm.
Uh, as a student, and so, and I would get kicked out of class for the silliest things. I mean, study detention hall was pretty much my second home when it came to home ec,
So
right?
like the teacher would kick you out.
Well, my home ec teacher would kick me out because um, I already knew how to sew. I started sewing when I was like 11, and they
Mm,
were sewing. They had patterns. I already knew how to cut out patterns. And she was like, step by step, how to cut out a pattern. Well, I already knew how to do those things.
mm,
And they were, cutting. out sleeves and just going very slow, and I already knew how to do those things. And so rather than direct me in another direction, I was disruptive to the class because I was moving faster than everyone else. And so
Mm-hmm.
since I was moving faster than everyone else, then you need to go to detention.
Your behavior problem.
I'm a behavior problem, absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. So I would get kicked out of class. And so for that whole session of home ec, I spent home ec while they were sewing in detention because I wouldn't, couldn't, didn't go along with the rest of the class. So. But yeah, it was a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it was quite different.
Tale as old as time. Sad
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say. Sad to say, that the black students are disruptive and, sent
Hmm.
out, and you could have really, a lot of times people internalize that anger and act out.
Hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
maybe you did. I don't know.
Yeah, I probably did. Yeah, she was really through with me though, because
Hmm.
we had a fashion show, and while they were making one outfit to show in the fashion show, I had made three because I was sewing at home, and I, entered into the fashion show, and I won first and second prize, and she was really upset.
No.
Yeah, I made this black and white dashiki dress.
Ooh.
Roberta has actually brought me some jersey fabric from New York. It was like a brown printed long dress, so that was my first and second. And I don't remember what the third thing was. I think it was a dress, some kind of dress or something. But I think I didn't get third prize because they didn't want to give
Yeah,
first,
it was
second,
too
and third.
much.
Yeah, too much.
Affirmative action for the white kids.
Right.
Did you get to walk in the show, or someone else wore your stuff?
Hmm. I
Ooh,
modeled. I modeled
look
it. I
at
had
you.
black tights on with my black and white dashiki mini dress. And yeah, yeah,
Look at that.
yeah. I know, right?
Okay, well, tell me, mother, at any point in your life, what are some other ways you've been first?
Mm. Other ways that I've been first. That's an interesting question. Um, you know, I think it's interesting because during that period of time when Black people and Black women weren't doing too much, you know. So anything you did almost seemed like a first.
Okay.
It was just like that, right?
Wow.
But I would say what I first remember was time in military. My first in military was um, they had a panel of, well, okay, so when I joined the Army, when I initially joined it, it was the Women's Army Corps.
Okay.
And so the women were there while I was in basic training. They integrated us. They became the Army. So I was now part
In
of the Army.
1970 something?
74-ish.
Okay.
74-ish, yeah. And so what they did is they convened this panel at the Sergeant Major's Academy to discuss with women what was the impact of being in the Army. So I sat on that panel. So I was the first Black woman to do that.
Oh,
Okay. It was the first panel, and I was the first Black woman to sit on that panel. Yeah. And then, me,
uh-oh.
they had the color guard, which is all ceremony and everything, and it looks so sharp, and they used to practice at the lot behind where I worked in the Army. And I would look out the window, and it was nothing but men. And so I asked my master sergeant, why are there only men out there? And he said, well, I don't know. You want to try out for the color guard? Yeah, I want to try out for the color guard. So I was the first woman in Fort Bliss, Texas, that I
Oh
know of
my
who tried out for
gosh.
the color guard. Yeah, I didn't stick with it because the cannons were too loud. I couldn't handle all that
But you were the first.
noise. I was the first, absolutely. I was the first. Um, so yeah, those any other firsts. Um, hmm. Can't think of any. There probably are, but
I'm sure there are, but no.
yeah,
Okay.
there probably are. I can't think of any right now. If I think of any, I'll email you.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I want to talk about another milestone. Mm, This is your book that you've been thinking about for a long time. When Black starts to crack, focusing on care caregiving in the Black community, as you described, the role that you're currently playing. But I'll let you tell the I have a few questions about it, but I think it'd be better if you describe what the book is about from your perspective.
What the book is about?
Hmm.
Yeah, the book is about the experience of being a caregiver in the Black community. And my theory, my thesis was that um, in our community, we tend to take care of our own in their homes or allowed in the Asian place, excuse me, as opposed to being institutionalized like in nursing homes. And so that was my theory. Um, and the reason I wrote the book is because I became an unplanned caregiver. There was no plan. I just happened to fall into it. As you know, I came back for a renovation project for my mother. Um, but then I noticed that there were other needs. There were people, some managing her finances because people were taking advantage of her, managing her health care, um, because her doctor, she wasn't following doctor's orders or making sure she went to the doctor, that kind of thing. And it was kind of foreign to me just being placed in that position. I felt locked in because I've always kind of been a free spirit. I can travel and go here and go there and do what I wanted to do. And so some things that were happening with her, I didn't quite understand. And I
Hmm.
was expecting her to be carrying on the way I'm accustomed to her carrying on, but there were some memory related issues that she was dealing with that I did not recognize. So I felt that it would have been helpful for me if I had witnessed other people who were caregivers, or if someone
Mm.
had told me some stories about being a caregiver, then I would have recognized some things about, my mom's own health. So the book is really a compilation. There's some research because I wanted to make sure that my theory um, held true. That I was the person who was thinking this, right? That other people, there was some evidence out there that Black people tend to do their caregiving, keep their aging parents in their home.
Hmm.
So I did some research and I found out, yeah, there's a lot of research out there about culturally Black people caring for their families rather than institutionalizing them. And then I did want to hear other people's stories. So I sent out a call for submission to have other people submit their experiences because, there are some similarities to caregiving, but there are also a lot of different nuances to caregiving. And so um, I did that. So yeah,
You,
I'm really proud of it. Very proud of
yeah,
the work. Yeah, yeah.
you
Feels
did
good
that.
being
What'd you say?
feels good being an author at
Yeah.
almost 70, right? My first
Uh-huh.
book. May as well say 70. Mhm.
Okay, watch me connect all this to being first generation.
Oh my God. Let me
I
see you work your magic.
well, I couldn't find it, but I do remember you writing at some point how you were the role you had kind of played with grandma in terms of like kind of taking care of her, and helping out and sending money home. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
can you I couldn't find it again in the book. Can you talk a little bit about that? So that was even before you were even before like dementia and her health and all that. Can you
Mhm.
just elaborate a little bit more on that, like that role you had?
Yeah, I mean, Mom was in a pretty tough situation. She lived with a man who was alcoholic and verbally and physically abusive and withheld a lot of things from her. And so the role that I played was I wanted to give her respite from all of that whenever I could,
Mm-hmm.
because for some reason she stayed in that relationship, and I didn't understand that. When things get tough for me, I'm gone. But she stayed, and so I would, offer her support in ways that I could. Her husband was withholding food from her. He would buy food and store it in the shed in the backyard, kind of thing. Um, but and I think that uh, for a long time I felt like my mother's protector from a very early age,
Mm-hmm.
protecting her because everybody else was gone
Mm-hmm.
or Dale was too young, right? So Ronnie was in Vietnam, and Rudy was in and out of jail, and Roberta was in New York, and I was the one that was in the midst of the abuse, right? Watching her
Mm-hmm.
um, being battered and watching his inconsideration of her, watching her work hard, go work, clean somebody's house, and then come home and do hair. And so I felt like her protector in that way. Um, so when I moved out to California, there were other adults living in the house, at least three other adults living in the house. And um, I called one time and the phone was turned off. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
y'all can't keep a phone on? What? All y'all living in there? And so then I just changed the phone number, got her a number because I wanted to be able to communicate with her. And so I just paid her phone bill every
Mm-hmm.
month while I was out there. And then there were times when I would talk to her and she wouldn't come right out and say she didn't have anything to eat. I had to read between the lines. And then I would just have her give me a list. What is it that you want? And I would have, at the time, I think Giant Delivery Service was called Peapod or something like that. And I would just, I don't think I was going online. I guess I was, maybe.
Well, I like an early version of it, but definitely not like the post-COVID version. It wasn't easy the way that it is now.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering how even did I order it because,
Yeah. I think you
yeah,
may have actually had to make a phone call
right.
because
Absolutely.
it wasn't like apps for that.
Right,
Hmm.
absolutely. Yeah. And so, I would order for her and just have the food delivered to the home for her. Um, And then, there were many times, well, all the time, she tell me she had a doctor's appointment, and I frustrated a lot of doctors because I would make a long distance phone call. I want to talk to the doctor or the nurse or somebody tell me she had an appointment, how were things? She had lab work. How was her lab work? So they were frustrated because I was adamant
Mm-hmm.
but I would call and check in with her doctors. And there were a couple of them that, okay, she's out of town. I understand you're concerned about your mom. But it was like her endocrinologist was helpful. And maybe the oncologist, she had an oncologist at the time because she had precancerous polyps. So she was seeing a cancer doctor. So those were the only two who were really understanding. The rest of them were pretty frustrated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, even when I was in the military, just to offer her some respite. I would have her come and visit us. She would
Mm-hmm.
come and spend time with us in Texas. I flew her to Texas. That was the first time she flew. South Carolina, when we were in South.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she came there. California, every year I would have her come out around Christmas time to give her
Mm-hmm.
some respite from what I believe to be a pretty bad situation because I was no longer in the midst of it anymore.
Yeah.
DC, the house in DC, she would come and spend weekends. The house in Clinton, the same thing.
Mm,
I
mhm.
was offering her an opportunity to get away from a bad situation. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really
Mm-hmm.
interesting because I was just a kid, so I didn't think of it that way. But it makes perfect sense as you describe it now. Also, I think well, more people need to write about this, but it is pretty common for the person in the family who's best positioned to even go to college to be the one that's like caring for the parent, right? Or as you describe it, offering respite or feeling any. I mean, I even felt that way about you. I felt, and just in very different. Our situations were very different, but I also felt like I had to care for you or protect you in some ways, and then you were doing the same thing for grandma. But just being in that role, because well, I wonder, did you? We could talk about it more later, but did you feel like the golden child of the siblings, or not so much?
Mm. Yeah, I felt in some ways yes, and in some ways no, because I really kind of felt disconnected from my siblings.
Okay.
I've never spent a lot of time with Roberta.
Mhm.
I was 5 when I left North Carolina. She was what 13, maybe she's 8 years older than I am. She was maybe 13. She never lived with us in Alexandria. She came the summer after she graduated, but immediately after that was sent to New York. Right. So there wasn't a real connection between me and Roberta. She flew me out to New York maybe once or something
Mhm.
like that. But she was the sister who came in from big city New York and bearing gifts and stuff, and then she was gone.
Gone. Mhm.
hmm and then Ronnie, um, I think Ronnie probably came to Alexandria his last year of high school is what I'm thinking. um, and then shortly after he graduated he was in Vietnam,
Mm.
and so he was gone. And then Rudy was just from the time he was maybe 15 or 16. So then I'm like 13 or 14, um, in and out of jail.
Mm. Mhm.
So, in a lot of respects, I think I felt like either an only child or an oldest child.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because Dale was my baby brother.
Right.
Right.
And it's
And then
what, 7? How
six
many?
years. Six, six
6 or
years.
7 years? Okay.
hmm So I think more for my cousins may have been, I felt more like a golden child.
Hmm.
Because I know when we would go to North Carolina, I would hear, because aunties say, well, you should be like Peanut, or you should
Mm.
laugh like you laugh too loud, laugh like Peanut. It was so, with some of the cousins, I kind of felt like the golden child. Like there were things that uh, they should aspire to do because I was doing
Wow.
it, right?
Okay. Mhm.
Um, but nobody was really seeing my life. They just saw me in August when I came to North
Mm.
Carolina to visit,
That's
right?
deep.
Yeah. So, but that's what they should aspire. I was the golden one. That was the golden child.
Mhm. Um, well, given that this is going to be a series about legacy, I thought
Mm.
I'd end on asking you about your grandchildren.
Yeah, I
Um,
love my grandchildren.
wow, talk about differences in like in a short period of time. So, my son, your grandson, is a college graduate, and I was trying to remember. I think of grandma's great grandchildren. I think he graduated before Ronnie did, right? I think he was the first.
Who?
Did Jabari graduate before Ronnie?
Oh,
Um,
Ronnie's daughter, Ronnie.
yeah.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
he did.
so he's the. I knew he was definitely the only man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then so that's Jabari, and then Zoe, my daughter, your granddaughter, on the cusp of graduating. So love to just, I know you love talking about your grandchildren, but
I
I just
do.
love for you to just reminisce, or not reminisce, but just reflect about, you being able to witness their very unique lives and educate. It's just
Hmm,
so
hmm.
unique. But yeah, just whatever you want to say about them.
Yeah. Well, I love my grandchildren,
I
surely.
do.
Jabari is the reason I came to California, to be perfectly well,
Hmm.
I tell everybody that I thought that I would only have, once you told me you were pregnant, that there would only be one child because, both of you are only children,
That's true.
and career minded,
Hmm.
and I figured that was going to be the only grandchild that I would have. Yeah.
Oh crap.
So I needed to be there to witness that because I wasn't going to have a second chance. So I decided that I was actually in graduate school at Howard. I was going to Howard
Oh
School of
yeah, I was
Business.
pregnant with him. That's right. I was 97.
Right.
Hmm.
And so I decided I'm quitting this. I'm moving to California. I'm going to find me a seminary because I want to go ahead and finish this degree. We're going to find something in California where I can, focus my energy on that. But it is so exciting to see the privilege because my
Mm.
grandchildren are very privileged.
100%.
They are very privileged individuals and probably not even aware of it. I know Zoe is probably not even aware of it. So it does my heart so much good to see that they have so many opportunities that were never even available, to me. Which means that your life is so much different than mine that you
Hmm.
even you are privileged,
Hmm.
and to know that from where I came, being a teen mom, growing up in the projects, just all of that, right? Just being able to look at you and see what you have accomplished and how you have laid the foundation and the groundwork for your children to do better. So, I just see that legacy where it starts from here and it's just getting, better and better and better each generation. So I'm very proud of what both of them are doing. I'm extremely proud of Jabari because of his entrepreneur aspirations, that. And, just that Zoe can pursue a degree in art. I mean, you better go get a job at the post office.
Literally, y'all, at the post office. We're not playing.
Right, or the federal government, DC, you're either going into civil service as a federal government employee or you're going to work at the post office.
And you stay there.
Right, yeah, you never leave. You retire after 40 years,
Hmm. Hmm.
So to see that my grandchildren has the opportunity, that Zoe has the opportunity to even think about going off to art school, to me, it's just such a tremendous blessing. It just makes me smile every time I think about it. And to know that Jabari has graduated from a 4-year college and, he didn't have to do it part time. He didn't have to work while he did it. He didn't have to stop and start all over again. He wasn't at a community college, all of
Mm.
that,
Mm.
it's just so exciting for me. Yeah. Thank you, Latanya.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been as amazing as I thought it would be. Um, and I mean, I appreciate you giving some indication of what your high school years were like. But next time, I would love to hear about your decision to go to the military. And you talked about going to UTEP and Midlands Tech and all that.
Mhm.
So I'd love to focus more on that. I'll just say now, I'll probably say it again, but one of my fondest memories was just sitting on the bed, watching you with those textbooks and like smelling them.
Look at me building legacy unknown.
Unknown, right? I think my favorite one was your marketing book. I think I can't
A
remember.
marketing book?
Yeah,
Yeah, probably. Yeah, just
I think that was my
marketing.
favorite, and I would have been no more than 8 years old.
Right, right.
um,
Yeah,
so anyway, we'd love to talk about that next time if that's okay with you.
that's fine with me.
All right. Thank you, Glow
Okay.
Reese. I
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
you. Love you.
Love you back.